the Blue Ribbon Committee on Child Protection. Call this meeting to order at 1 o'clock. If you wouldn't mind, please silence your cell phones, if you don't mind. Turn them off or silence them. This meeting is recorded, so for the purposes of both of that, I'd like for everybody's cell phone to be off. Chaplain Tony Graham from the Harrison County Jail is here to open us up in prayer.
Heavenly Father, as we come here and just thinking of the task that lies before this committee and the work that they hope to do, God, your word tells us to give justice to those who are fatherless and weak. And it tells us to help and rescue those who are needy. And Lord, those are great needs. And God, I'm just thankful that we recognize that. Lord, you have created us to reflect your character, and caring for those who are in need is such a reflection of who you are. So God, help each person who is involved with this as they go through the task. Lord, we pray that you would continue to fuel the passion that even brought this about. And God, I also pray, Lord, that they would not grow weary in the well-doing. Lord, that's a warning that your word gives us to tell us that when we're working hard on something, it's not always easy. And in a situation like this, some of the circumstances, Lord, will just be hard. But God, we pray that you would strengthen those who are working it. Give them wisdom and discernment. Help them to make an impact on those who are in need. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Please remain standing. With Ms. Pope, please. Pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks for everybody being here. I'm really happy to see this amount of people that's in this room today. It touches my heart to see this many people here, so thanks for being here. If you have any questions for the committee, there's some comment cards you can fill out. We'll take those and talk about those during the meeting. The one thing I will say is that this is an oversight committee for transparency and accountability. That's what this committee's for. Any questions? We're going to do a public comment at the end of the meeting. Everybody will be allowed 3 minutes, and Carla Pope will be the timekeeper on that. The committee members, if you would please introduce yourself.
I'm Beth Casey. Hi, I'm sorry, and I'm late. So you know a little bit about me then. I have a very lengthy career. I'll just give you the high points. So I started in 1990 at DHS at the time and worked there in a variety of positions, and left in 2000 and went to the Harrison County Youth Court. And I worked in a variety of positions and under 2 different judges. And then retired in 2015 and went to what was Gulf Coast Mental Health Center. Was in a variety of positions there, and left there in 2019, and now I'm in a very small little private practice in Ocean Springs. And that's where I currently am. And I also have been working with Jamie, doing some training for Friends of the Court now for a while, and before that it was CASA. So that's a snapshot.
I'm Kim Haney, and I am a local attorney. I've been practicing for 26 years. Some days that feels like 400 years, but it's enough. I primarily practice in family law. I have worked with the committees and stuff on adoption throughout the state and overseas. I have worked with committees on orphanages in Nepal, Norway, Poland, several across Africa, and some in South America. So heart is with children today and hopefully always. Thank you.
My name is Debbie Davis. I'm the Director of Women's and Children's Services at Memorial Hospital in Gulfport. I have been there for 36 years, and 35 of those years have all been under labor delivery and management in that area. So my heart's with all of my mamas and babies, and making sure that once we get them delivered safely, we want them to go home safely.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Haley Zelinka, and I am the General Counsel at Memorial Hospital. Happy to be here with all of you today. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Troy Peterson, retired Harrison County Sheriff. I've been in law enforcement. I guess I'm the law enforcement side, me and Carla, but 33 years. So it's I've seen this 1,000 times over and over and over again. So thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for having me.
I'm Carla Pope. I was a police officer full-time for 10 years, and then I jumped into the academic arena. I retired from Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College after 20 years. I've been the criminal justice instructor there. I'm currently the criminal justice department chair at William Carey University.
I'm Jeannie Heron. I have probably 20 years in human services, different types. I used to work in a skilled care and assisted living centers, 3 different ones. I also, in my past, I've been executive director for CASA of Harrison County for 8 years. Came to work in the county in 2021 and still here, which I feel very privileged to be here, and work as director of Friends of Court program, which is in Chancery Court. We work on guardianship cases, custody cases, and also vulnerable adults. And also I am the program liaison for Harrison County Advocacy Center, trying to hook up people with resources and services. So thank you all for coming today.
Okay, thank you all. This meeting today is primarily our organizational meeting to slate officers to be voted at next week's meeting. So with that said, I'm going to open the floor for 3 nominations. One's for chair, one's for co-chair, one's for secretary. So not everybody jump at one time, but let's open the floor first for secretary. Do I have any nominations?
You're recording secretary, yeah.
Yeah, I nominate Jeannie.
Jeannie?
Mhm.
The second.
Well, then I'm going to go right back at you, Carla. I nominate Carla as Sergeant-in-Arms for the timekeeping and order.
Well, we're just going to do these 3.
Oh, those
right
are
now,
3,
yeah.
okay.
Chair, co-chair, and secretary. So do I have any more nominations for secretary? All right, we'll close that. Any nominations for co-chair?
I nominate Kim Haney for co-chair. Is that okay, Kim?
I would be on. Well, I'll second that.
Any other further nominations for co-chair? We'll close that. Nominations for chair.
Haley, would you?
I would certainly be honored to that. I would just need to, my professional responsibilities at Memorial would require me to get my board's approval there first.
So I make a nomination for Haley pending her board's approval.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Any further chair, any further nominations for chair? I think we'll close this time. All the guests, did y'all sign in? You came in? Okay, thank y'all for that. Carly, you want to give us a report for the August 9th meeting?
Yes, I have reserved a big meeting room at William Carey University for August the 9th. the committee is going to host law enforcement leaders for all law enforcement agencies in Harrison County, so that we can just kind of make sure they know what the Blue Ribbon Committee's mission is and what we stand for, and to seek some input from them as far as processes and things as such. And so that's been secured. William Carey has offered to pay for the lunch. So I hate to tell you, it's by invitation only. So those invitations will be going out to the law enforcement leaders next week.
Haley, report from Memorial numbers for reports for June's CPS.
Yes, I sent the committee the data from that, and I have here as a guest at the meeting, Cindy Johnson, who is our director of the social workers at Memorial. So Cindy, do you have that kind of committed to memory, the numbers of? I mean, it was roughly.
Yes. Yeah.
Roughly, I didn't. I distributed the printout to the committee members last week, but I can't remember the number that we had kind of rounded to. I know that we pulled from 2020 to 2024. Troy, you rounded. You were the math whiz in the room at the time. Do you remember the number that we had since that day?
No, and I do remember doing it, but I don't remember the number.
Okay. If you'll give me a second to pull that up and go down the agenda,
I think it was like 40-something for the rest of the year.
for this year.
Yeah, for just this year. 47 or something like that. Does that sound about right?
That does sound familiar. Does that sound right to you, Cindy?
I remember the ones for the June, and that when 15 for June that were reported, I don't remember.
Okay, so for June, we've made, what did you say? 15 reports, and I'll pull the data, Troy, before,
And that was to CPS.
yes,
Is
ma'am.
that correct?
That is correct.
So we're gonna, I wanna say it was 40 to date from January, correct? Is that what?
40-something, yeah.
I think it was approximately 50, but I'm gonna pull it up.
$87.
87 since January?
That's correct.
Way off.
Is that newborns or any age?
That would just be any report that we've made
That was all 87 or 18.
87.
under 18, correct. Sorry. Is there another 87?
Does the 87 include the 15?
For June, yes,
Yes.
yes, sir.
So I,
Go ahead, Gina.
no, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
Out of the 87, do we know, does Memorial know how many were responded to at all, or do you keep track of any of that?
No, that would not, we would not be privy to that information. Then I did get a public records request this week from the Sun Herald, and that was my response there too, was I provided the data which would be included as public records. However, I'm not gonna make any representation as to something that would be best answered by CPS.
So just to make sure I understand the process, so a report's made, and there's notation of that in the hospital records. And then as far as any follow-up, y'all's part ends when the report is made and it's handed over to whatever entity the report's made to, whether it's CPS or law enforcement or.
Yeah,
Are there-
to the extent that the patient is discharged, yes.
Yes, okay, okay.
Is the floor open or is this questions?
I'm about to open it up here in just a second. Yes, ma'am, I'm gonna skip to a couple things, and I can see where this is going,
Yeah.
so I wanna go ahead and open the floor at this time for discussion from attendees. There's two comment cards here that we're gonna address those first, and then, any public comment that you may have.
Okay, and this is where I keep time? Okay. So what I've done is I just set my timer on my phone for 3 minutes, and I had a fancy note made up. Can you tell I've been a professor and have had students do numerous presentations? So I will hold up this and make sure you see it. And then, and I'm gonna turn my sound on so that we're all on the same page and you can hear when my timer goes off. When you hear the ding, if you keep on talking, I'll just say, thank you for your input, please sit down. Actually, I'll jump up and tackle you, how's that? Okay, so, we've got two, cards, and I happen to know both people, so Robert Jones. So, do what?
How y'all want, just want me to sit?
I don't know.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
You're good, you're good.
Okay, I'm good, when you
Tell
start
me when
talking,
to go.
when you start talking, I'm gonna hit the go.
Hey, I'm Robert Jones. I work with CPS in the legal department. For those of y'all that I haven't met, I'm not gonna take 3 minutes. So first off, I'd like to just commend all of y'all, members of the community coming forward with the goal of ensuring that children in this area are safe is a worthy goal. So I appreciate the effort so far and moving forward. So I've spoken briefly with the commissioner about the committee, and we believe it would be beneficial for y'all if there was a member or if there was a representative of CPS on the committee. I believe the board on Monday kept the number of committee people open. And so what we would propose is somebody that has a wealth of knowledge as to the policies, procedures of CPS, would have access to data that y'all do not have. And I mean, frankly, in other words, I mean, y'all have been tasked with improving a car, but you gotta know what's in the engine. And we know the parts on our side of what all goes into it and what this committee is tasked with overseeing. And so that's my main question. We would just propose that CPS have a representative with the committee to assist y'all. I am not nominating myself. We would propose somebody with a wealth of knowledge in all the policies, procedures, the laws as they stand right now and how they've changed. And so I thank y'all for your time. I thank you for your efforts. I thank everybody for being here because that shows community support. And so thank you for your time.
I do not disagree with you, but the one thing I will say is this, and you're referring to a car, if the parts are labeled correctly, then we know where they go. And that's where the parts are falling apart here. The parts aren't labeled. So we're trying to make them to where there's a fundamental plan from beginning to end. So whenever a child comes in the hospital, the reporting policy or the reporting parties should be aware of that immediately. But the hospital, CPS, law enforcement.
Well, I agree with that. And what a representative for CPS would be able to explain is how things are now. And that would enable y'all to find out how that system can improve, how it can
Do not
go
disagree with
smoother.
that.
I would propose, instead of being a member of the committee, that we invite CPS to come to the meetings so that we can pick your brain and, you know, find out what goes on.
Or even as a advising liaison, so that you're involved, but not actually on the committee, so that there's open communication.
The only issue I would have with that is, I'm assuming there are gonna be meetings. Instead of us coming here and batting back and forth, if there's a solid, complete conversation there, then, you know, this meeting goes smoother as opposed to me just jumping up and down. That's be like, well, no, which I'm not here to do that. I'm here to learn and, be of whatever help I can be. But I think being in the conversations, I think y'all will get a better picture of everything, and maybe y'all see things differently, but you at least get the entire picture.
Well, this committee was not formed to bash any one agency.
Right.
That's not what we're here for.
No, I think we all
That's not what
understand
I'm here for, I can tell you that right now. And what, you know, the three things that I said earlier was this is an oversight committee for transparency and accountability. That's my saying, that's what I'm bringing to this table, that's what I want it to be. So I'm not here to bash CPS, I'm not here to bash anybody else. The only thing I want to make sure that this committee oversees everything that happens with a child, and we can make it better. That's it.
And I think that's a worthy goal. Yeah, I did not take offense to anything. I appreciate y'all's efforts.
Trish, you have something?
Yes, thank you. My name's Tricia Tisdale. I'm with the Boyce Holman Associates Board Attorney. And just a procedural matter, I fully respect and appreciate CPS being here and wanting to contribute to make the system better. The committee is formed by the Board of Supervisors. Appointment of power to the committee is through the Board of Supervisors. You are not in a position to make appointments to the committee yourselves, just procedurally. So CPS should probably, if they want to participate with the board committee position, make the request in writing to the Harrison County Board of Supervisors, where it'll be taken up at that time.
Oh, yes, I'm done. Yes,
Because you
I
have,
yield my
you
time.
have 38 seconds.
So I don't even praise us some more.
I don't even get to hold my side.
Where'd you get that little card? No.
Okay, so the next card that we have is from Judge Margaret Alfonso.
Okay, thank y'all so much, and again, I want to echo what Robert has had to say. I so much appreciate your willingness to devote your time and your expertise to this cause, and what I understand this is all about is to study the procedure for the protection of children and to make recommendations after that study is done to the Board of Supervisors. So with that purpose in mind, I would just ask to be on the agenda at a subsequent meeting, because I have some recommendations to make based upon my experience in child protection since 1976 in one form or fashion. And I just want to add that none of my suggestions will cost the taxpayers any money. So if I could
Judge,
just
you want to be on
plan
the August 26th meeting?
August 26th.
Or I'm
would be
sorry,
fine.
July 26th,
July, is that next
2 weeks.
2 weeks? 2 weeks would be fine. Since my recommendations, you know, may take some time to explain, could I have 15 or 20 minutes?
We'll see about it.
Okay. He's cutting off a judge. He's enjoying it. Thank you, Sheriff.
Yes, ma'am.
July 26th.
Yes, ma'am.
Right here, or did y'all change the location?
No, we'll do it right here.
Right.
With the crowd that I think is going to be here, we'll keep having it.
Okay.
So I only have the two. Do we open it? to
Yeah, we'll open the floor. Any other public comments, questions?
I didn't realize the cards were in the
That's
back.
fine. Could you state your name, please, sir?
I'm Bill Alexander. My wife Ellen, we were working with CASA for 8 years. Then we followed Judge Alfonso to the Friends of Court. And in that period of time, one of the most important things that helped us in all of our cases, number one, was the medical profession, which is well represented here. They, doctors, nurses, everybody spoke to us directly. Had no problem giving us information. The second was all police agencies. We had no problem there. Sometimes they wanted they go and talk and say, please give me a copy of the court order saying that you are either CASA or Friends of Court. No problem. I would like to add one last deal to the program that you had. Have another one like that for all of the educational people. The heads of all public, private, and even go as far as daycare. I know we had good results when we met with the head of Head Start with some of our children. So if you could have some kind of a program like that where they were invited into the group, because my daughter is a special ed teacher in Georgia, and she says they're constantly having to send notes in. A lot of our cases, we go to a principal, we don't even have to sit in the lobby. I mean, they want us in there to talk to us. So see if there can be one walked around just like you did with the police officers. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anybody else?
Yes.
Public comment, does anybody else want to speak, ask questions? Yes, ma'am. Can you give me your name, please?
My name is Gwendolyn Beck, retired social worker from DHS. My concern is, first of all, I'm glad, I didn't know how this committee got appointed or what the purpose of it was. And at least I got 2 questions answered. And the thing that the DHS is here representative from the top is also a good thing. But I think that, somebody made a suggestion about a social DHS being on the committee, and you all shut that down because of whatever your reasons are.
CPS.
But how can you?
You're saying CPS, not DHS.
Well, when I was there, it was DHS. Okay, so now.
Oh, that's right, they did split, you're right.
They did.
You're right.
Yeah, and they're interchangeable, I guess, but I'm old head. But my concern is that, and I see Beth is on there, which is also a good thing, because I know she's a social worker, and sometimes she has good ideas. And
I will vouch for my.
Oh my God.
I know.
I would
Can you
rather,
believe it?
I would rather have the judge vouch
So
for me.
we've always warred, for y'all to understand, we have warred. So, but I have great respect for Gwen. She dedicated her entire life to child protection. So I value anything you have to add to this, because I'm sure you would not want to see things that have come to pass with the death of some children. That was what we always feared.
Right.
I can tell you, speaking from someone that worked in this profession for a
Is she
very long
taking up
time.
my 3 minutes?
I stopped the timer.
Yeah, 'cause you never stop talking.
Thank you. So, yes, you would not want to see what has come to pass. That's the sad thing about this.
Well,
the one thing we always feared was the death of a child.
Well, I know, but even in our time, as workers, when we work, the same time period, you're a little bit older than I am, but unfortunately, we've seen dead babies and children being killed, beaten, raped, we've seen all of that.
Right.
So this is nothing new.
Right.
Everything new is old, or everything old is new again. So this is nothing new, but my concern is, and I don't have a problem, I don't want to seems condescending, but I don't have a problem with oversight committees. There's always need for that because things can go horribly wrong. And I have no idea what's going on with CPS right now. I don't. I don't know. And when I saw the 2 children that were killed on the news, I thought, well, my God, that is awful. But I still don't understand how this Blue Ribbon Committee, without a social worker from DHS, well, I know a social worker who's working now cannot be there. I get that. But somebody from the agency who has at least walked the mile in their shoes, not me, but somebody needs to be on this committee because it's unfair to make a judgment call on cases when you don't have somebody who's done it.
I didn't disagree with him when he said that. That wasn't a disagreement.
Okay.
I agree with you. But again, this board cannot choose
Right.
who's on that panel.
Well, I hear that now, but we didn't know that before.
Yes, ma'am. You want to give her another 30 seconds since you took all the time?
As soon as Jeff started
more
talking.
time.
I mean, but if you want to talk,
time.
if you want to talk some more, you can, but I do stop the clock. I did for Robert
Did you have
too.
anything else?
When somebody
Do you have
else starts
anything else?
talking, I stop it.
I'm sorry.
Did you have anything else? I'll give you 30 seconds.
Can I hold my 30 seconds maybe when my mind refocuses?
She reserves
You can wait until next Friday. You get here next Friday, you get an extra 30 seconds. Is there anybody else? Any other public comment at all? Questions? Okay.
What, there's the lady.
I'm sorry, I didn't
It's
see you. Go
okay,
ahead.
it's okay. I appreciate the committee as well.
Can I get your name, please, ma'am?
Sheila Anderson.
Go right ahead.
I saw the news, that was announcing about the committee, and I saw Rebecca Powers talking about the confidentiality aspect. To the extreme that my son, which is the father of my granddaughter, they will not tell how this case was closed to him, and he's the one that reported it. No, it's confidential, we can't tell you anything.
Right.
It was never reported to law enforcement at all, and CPS representative told me they are not obligated to do so. And I printed their whole rules and regulations, they are required to do that. And then spoke to an investigator at the sheriff's department, and he told me, well, I could subpoena the records, but the case is closed, so I can't. And the case is closed without informing, the parent. So the confidentiality thing is an issue for me as well. I don't know why he wasn't informed of what happened. There was never youth court. We never went anywhere. We requested drug testing, nothing.
Well, you're, and I hate to say this, but you're a prime example of why we're putting this together.
And that's why we're here.
Just the
Yeah.
accountability of everything. And it's, you're one of many that has the same questions.
George, can I just say that on July 26th, part of my recommendations will be in response to just what she said. And I've studied this issue, as I said, since 1976. And something has got to be done to the shroud of confidentiality, and my recommendations will address that on the 26th.
I would agree with that. And this will, Kathy, is there any other public comment, questions?
Well,
Anything else?
can I take my 30 seconds?
Go ahead, Ms. Beck, you got it.
I think that this, I remember when, and this, with all this gray hair, I'm trying to focus. I remember when we were working, that confidentiality did not exclude family members, not immediate family members anyway. It does exclude a whole other people around the situation. But it's also left up to the court to decide, and correct me if I'm wrong, whether or not information can be disseminated to whomever. Now, if it's the grandmama, granddaddy, and whoever, mom and dad and them, then no. But I saw that same interview, about this confidentiality. Just like the hospital has HIPAA, DHS, CPS has confidentiality, and it just can go so far. Because when you're dealing with minors, it's just like if a child was arrested for murder, that name is not immediately put out there until that child is charged, if I'm not correct, am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So I think that's the same line of thought we have here.
Well, and let me go back on that too, and she is correct. In my years of law enforcement, I have seen, just like they have seen everything, I've seen everything. Anything imaginable, I've seen it. And when you're working a case, especially with a child, and DHS or CPS gets involved, they have that right to close a case when they want to and can. It's when law enforcement follows that case forward and goes further with that case. I've seen cases that are made up to the point of just for a divorce case. I've seen it made up just for custody issues. I've seen a lot of outlandish things being brought up, and CPS finds those. If they find that immediately, they're going to close something down. But it's, to me, law enforcement is not involved enough in this. And I don't know the particulars of your case. I don't know where they were, if they were even contacted. But it goes back to that point where the aunt, the uncle, and the cousin, and the nephew, they don't need to have any information. But the parents, who are the parents of that child, they need to have both parties, have that information. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, because the case can't be closed unless mom and dad is involved. I don't know how
And
you
that's-
even move forward without
Again,
mom and grandparents.
That's why I
because
said that's the
yeah.
reason we're here. That's the
Right.
prime example.
And one more thing, and I'll shut up. And also, I don't know how it works now, but when I was working, we couldn't close a case unless the family court said we could close it.
It's true.
We didn't have that authority, and I don't know if that's changed, but we could not close a case. Even cases that we didn't pick up a child, if it was a supervision case, whereas we didn't pick up the child, but we were supervising that case, we still couldn't close it without the court's permission. So she's putting up a note.
You owe us 18 seconds. All right, is there anybody else?
If I may, I think that's gonna be, the confidentiality question's gonna be a recurring issue. I mean, if it would be beneficial, I've studied the statute. I can do a short presentation just explaining the barriers to information, if that would be beneficial.
That'd be great, yeah. We have a,
Get on the agenda.
if you would, just call or email Jeannie and get on the agenda, and we'll definitely do that. All right, any other questions?
Can I make one
Yes, sir.
comment? After next week, when we have the meeting, it might be a situation that each week after that, we set up that week as a topic, for instance, just on the confidentiality. Another one just on child, or some form, so that the hour that we spend is on questions and all, just like what we just heard. And make that,
Yeah, they'll be on the agenda.
Be on
The
the
speakers
agenda.
are going to be on that particular, and some weeks we may not have a speaker, so
Mm-hmm.
depending upon who contacts me to get on the agenda, so, but we have to publicly make everybody aware of, our meeting agenda.
good.
And that was actually something that was gonna be covered, was a list of potential experts that could come and talk to the group and talk to the public about exactly what you're asking, that question. Okay. The one thing that I wanna cover, and this goes back to you, your questions, is legislation. And, what I've learned through my life is that legislation means everything. If there's not on paper, I tell all my guys, I've told them for years, if it's not on paper, it didn't happen. Simple as that. So legislation means everything when it comes to us enforcing those laws and enforcing what needs to be done for a child. If the legislation's not there, there's nothing we can do. We can do it in good faith, and in the end, it's just gonna be thrown out of court. So, and I will say this, there's a lot of law enforcement people out there that do things in good faith and knowing it ain't going anywhere, but they get that child out of that situation right then and there, and they don't care what happens to them, what can happen to them later on, but at least they cured the situation at hand. But, talking talking about that, sponsoring legislation or getting legislation changed is where the public comes in. It's where you come in. It's where you call your legislature and you explain exactly what you just explained to this board by saying the confidentiality clause should not exist when it comes to parents, and let them change that in the legislation. And at that point in time, you're going to get your information, as long as it's law.
It's not law now?
It is law now.
Right.
Yes, it is, but that's what both parties are talking about. It is in the statute, it is what their policies they go by. Why she didn't get it, that's the question, that's why we're here today, for this committee. So she should have that information, but she doesn't. Or your daughter or your son, whichever side, should have that information. So, those are the questions that we're asking right now. Okay, we kind of skipped through the agenda. My last thing was public comment.
I think we did, we need to talk about number 5. Oh, we already did that?
I skipped that one, Jeannie. I'll explain later.
No.
I did.
I talked about the luncheon.
Yeah.
No,
Seven,
number 5.
Wait.
It's a different.
No, that's fine. Timeline for recommendations to Harrison County Board of Supervisors. First recommendation possibly in September.
Okay,
That's open for discussion.
okay.
And that's recommendations from,
The vote
from
yes,
the committee.
Blue Ribbon, yeah.
It's,
So we'll have to come up with some things.
this is rather early to be put on the agenda today, but, I would say by August meetings, and this definitely needs to be put on there.
August.
And let us have a couple to get some notes.
And to present in September, correct? Yes, we'll discuss it in August and to present in September. And then, media. Number 9.
Yours is different than mine.
Yeah.
I scratched that one off. Media parents who from committee will attend. We have a date, time.
No, it was just up for discussion, someone mentioned that. So should we do a whole media campaign on this Blue Ribbon?
I don't think right now is the time to do it. I think we need to wait. Again, let's wait till August, September, till at least recommendations get put forward. Does anybody have any further questions at all? Any comments at all? Anything you'd like to see this committee target or tackle?
I have never had to go through this process before.
Can I get your name, ma'am?
Dinah, D-I-N-A-H, Shuttleworth. Is there a list of how CPS processes? Was there a court date for this case that was closed? Because they were never notified of any court being taken in order to close the case. There was never, the father was never notified that the child's case was taken to court, and they were just told the case was closed. Is there a list of
Could they have had
steps?
court without both parents?
No.
I mean,
And I don't know the answer to that. You
You'd
would
have
know
to
the answer better than anybody,
Yeah.
but as far as I can tell
Confidentiality
you,
they want.
to me, and I'm just the outside looking in, don't take me wrong, because I don't know the circumstances, but the due process was not done. And that's what I see, but I don't know the particulars of the case or what happened or anything else. But it sounds like it's a due process issue. Trish?
I'm sorry, I want to follow up. As y'all know, many of you were at the board meeting last Monday when the board created the committee. And Dr. Caldwell appeared, as did Ms. Wade from CPS. And there was in her statement to the board, Dr. Caldwell stated that she had attempted to reach the director for CPS on multiple occasions, and she had not received a return phone call. Number one, I want to know, has that occurred? to your knowledge, since Dr. Caldwell works at Memorial. And number two, there was, it was represented, that Memorial does not have anything other than an 800 number to contact CPS. Has that been corrected? Do you have a valid number to reach CPS when you do? And out of those 87 cases that you've reported since January, there was a representation, do you know how many of those you could not get CPS? You know, you say you didn't call it and you couldn't get a response, and so after a certain amount of time, I know now you've decided to go forward contacting law enforcement.
Well, yeah, and I'll go through the answers to all of
Perfect.
those. I'm prepared.
Thank you so much.
In fact, I was kind of asking Troy over here if I could sneak in some updates, and that was the intent of my involvement on this committee, was to report exactly what I'm about to share with this group. And I promised these people at this table that I would have a report today on progress, and I do. A couple of weeks ago, when we were having some trouble with following up, I consulted with Cindy, who I mentioned is over the social workers, and she sent out a memo that said, you know, in light of the reports, in light of the volume that you all are dealing with, in the event that we don't get a conversation with a caseworker within an hour, or at least a receipt of the report, then go ahead and call law enforcement if you believe that this situation necessitates it. That went out to our staff. Since Monday, everybody, I have gotten calls from the youth court judges for Harrison and Hancock County, one of whom gave me his cell phone number, so that if I come across a situation wherein our social workers or our neonatologist that spoke on Monday says, I cannot in good conscience safely discharge this patient home, then she can pick up the phone, not between 8 and 5, but at any time, and call and say, hey, I need somebody to go to this house. We've sent out a policy to the social workers that say, going forward, when you file your report with CPS, you're simultaneously going to send this 440 via fax and email to the youth court. I've talked directly to Valerie over here. I've talked directly to Judge Dickinson. I've talked to Judge Farb. They know to expect this, and they have told me that they will independently receive those going forward. So now that's going to help us with the accountability on this front end, and we can come back, and that's huge. I mean, that's before we had a first meeting. I've already, been able to say, here we go, we're solving problems, and we're going to keep this from happening. And again, it was nice to be able to hear. I've been at Memorial for almost 10 years, and nobody could tell me why. Historically, we've always sent a 440 to youth court, so that at the time Judge Alfonso knew, let's follow these kids. Well, I never got an answer from my side on why that stopped. But now, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't matter, because we're doing it now. When we get a child that comes in, for whatever our social workers or our doctors see that they suspect any sort of abuse or neglect, we're gonna mandatorily report to both of these agencies, and we're gonna see what we can do from there. All right, Trish, you asked me some other questions. I know that Commissioner Sanders has a meeting with me. She is coming to meet with me in Gulfport next week, and she is coming to meet with Dr. Caldwell next week, and the CEO of Memorial. She's coming down from Jackson to meet with all of us next week.
Fantastic.
Great updates. What else? Did I miss anything?
The 87,
Yes.
how many were subsequently referred to law enforcement because you could not? And do you have a number besides the 800 number for CPS?
I do not currently, Cindy, you can help me on this. We do not currently, other than the hotline in our online reporting, we don't have another additional line that just the hospital has to report suspected abuse to CPS directly now. That I can speak with them about and see about working that out.
For the online supervisor on the weekends or after hours.
Correct. I mean, we believe wholeheartedly that the youth court now access will give us kind of, I guess, that need, will fulfill that need.
And, sorry, Can I speak to, whenever you're finished?
Yeah, just let me-
respond to that.
so that was the number question. As far as data goes, Cindy, I'm gonna defer to you on any info we're in of those 87 reports that we made to CPS. If we had to, at that time, I know for a fact that we didn't abandon a CPS report and go to law enforcement because we never heard anything. But if you have information as to follow-ups, or if we did have to seek, I guess, help elsewhere, or if we just never heard anything, I'm not sure. Do you have that information available?
I don't, I know we've called, PD a couple of times to get the social worker on-call number. We used to get that number all the time, and then we just stopped getting their on-call schedule and their on-call number. And so, when we've gotten the on-call social worker number, we call them and haven't gotten, they say, well, we'll look into it. We don't get anybody coming to the hospital.
So maybe there are, I guess, from you guys, some questions as to, could we get that number? And why did we have it at one time and not have it now?
So I can answer why you guys had it before and don't have it now. I'm Gwendolyn Boston. I'm the Assistant Deputy Commissioner for Coverage Area 7, that includes the 6 coastal counties here. So a year and a half ago, CPS specialized the entire state. So now there are multiple on-call schedules. That divided, the specialization of the agency divided the work. So now you have an investigative unit and you have a casework unit, you have a licensure department, all of those things. Every single entity now has an on-call schedule. And so at the time that we specialized, it seemed that it would be confusing for you to make these calls, Memorial, law enforcement, whichever entity was trying to reach us. And so our 800 number is our hotline. You're speaking with a live person when you call that number. And so if any entity who calls makes a report, say, hey, I need someone to come directly, they are calling the numbers. They're deciding, okay, is this a casework situation or is this an initial investigation situation? They're looking that information up in our system and they're routing it to the correct people. So without you knowing who or what you need or what entity is involved, you wouldn't necessarily know as layman citizens, as an entity of law enforcement, as an entity from the hospital, school district, whomever it is. So if you're reaching out to us after hours, there is a person set in place. We have someone who responds to the hospital. And as it speaks to the current policy that Memorial has put in place, I know specifically for Harrison County that we have been reaching out to Harrison County after hours when they are in need of someone to respond to the hospital immediately. To my knowledge, that we're doing that as expected.
The person that's on the other end of that line, the 1-800 number, they dictate to whether or not somebody's responding right then and there?
They're not dictating to whether or not somebody's responding right then and there. They are simply passing that information on. And if you are speaking to a live person when you make that report, if you say, hey, I need someone to respond immediately, we are responding.
Is that the experience that the hospital has had? No. Okay, so we've identified a breakdown in the process. So we're calling the 1-800 number. I understand the specialization part, but it seems like that's our breakdown. They're calling the 1-800 number. They're saying we have a situation that CPS needs to respond to immediately. And then it may be being routed to the appropriate specialized unit, but then there is no communication coming from that specialized unit back to the hospital to let the hospital know, hey, we've got somebody on the way, here's what we're doing, kind of thing, because just from what Dr. Caldwell has said, they've literally kept babies in the NICU unit for days, waiting for CPS to respond at the cost of thousands of dollars a day, because it's not, the hospital has determined it's not a safe place for that baby to be sent home to. So that's one of, I mean, am I the only one that's?
No, that's
Okay.
accurately
So-
stated.
Ms.
So
Wendell, let me ask
that's
this
one
question.
of our breakdowns.
Let me ask this question, Ms. Cornwell. Do you have, for CPS, we're 82 counties in the state of Mississippi, do you have personnel assigned to each county?
Yes.
Okay, so then I'm just logistically, this is my opinion, and you can crucify it if you want to, but I think it needs to be heard. If you have an on-call person for that month, for that schedule, for whatever it is, what we do for, what law enforcement, I'm speaking for law enforcement, what we do for the hospitals and what we do for everybody, we send out a monthly list. We fax a monthly list that says, here's the on-call. And that person is on call, and we provide that person's cell number, their office number, and dispatch number. So if they can't get in touch with those two, they're calling dispatch to dispatch can get them. Why wouldn't something like that be in place where you call that person individually, and that person that is a CPS worker determines whether him or her are showing up that night to do a case?
Well, I can tell you why it hasn't been provided to every entity, because in all honesty, it changes. Things arise and that schedule has to be updated and changed. And you could be operating off of a schedule that you received at the first of the month, but mid-month, that schedule might have changed.
You just send out another schedule.
I realize that. I see how that could be just a simple fix in that situation, but at the same time, there are other things in place. You're saying send it to you, but what if that information doesn't get posted appropriately on your end and you're still calling off of another old report?
Okay, how would it look for me as the sheriff or chief of police to give that same answer you just gave to the public?
Not good.
It would be good. I mean, I am, and I
But is
stand
that
by what I
not why
said.
this committee is here,
It
for
is.
oversight, for recommendation, and for
It
things
is,
like that?
and that's what we're talking about right
and-
now.
And I am too, but I'm not saying, I'm not in a position at this very moment to tell you, oh, yes, we're gonna deliver that on-call schedule to you.
I'm not asking, the only thing I'm saying is that,
And
your
I,
suggestion.
and this suggestion is gonna be taken
If
back
it-
in
if it,
recommendation. You asked why, so I was responding.
Some things in life are so simple.
It is.
And people make it so hard. And I think this is something that can be simply fixed just by a computer screen and pushing send. I think it's very simple.
If you don't mind, and this may sound completely stupid because I'm trying to understand exactly what's going on, okay? In a day that we can use call forwarding from every phone.
Can't hear you.
Speak loud.
We use call forwarding for every phone. So my phone from my office goes to my cell. When I hand off the phone to somebody else, I don't physically hand them the phone. I just call forward. So the number that you're giving to Memorial, why can y'all not forward that on-call number to the person who's going on call?
We don't have just one single line for on-call. Each specialist that's on call has their own individual phone number when they're on call.
So there's multiple numbers.
There are multiple
per
numbers.
night, per
There's- I don't know that I'm understanding your question correctly. So how our on-call schedule is set up, there are multiple entities that are on that call schedule. Several different people. Each individual, the way that they're contacted and when it's their night, they are being reached by their individualized state-issued cell phone.
Can you not forward the number that they would call to that cell phone?
So I think.
The number that they will be calling on call is the 800 number.
Okay, so it could not be forwarded.
No, it cannot be.
That's what I want to.
And again, I said at the very beginning, and I'm not here bashing anybody. We're discussing this to fix things. But you just said it's a state-issued cell phone.
Yeah.
If it's a state-issued cell phone, their number should be public at every hospital, every PD, everybody should have it. It's state-issued. Just everybody and their mama has this number. I mean, I get phone calls. I've been retired since January, and I still get phone calls. So it's,
I have a question.
you owe me 18 cents.
His hand up.
Yeah.
I'm Chris Clark, formerly of law enforcement. To your question, the way their on-call schedule is worked out, and I'm not trying to speak out of turn for CPS, but they have an on-call worker, and then they have an on-call supervisor. And your on-call worker, I think if I remember correctly, is responsible for 1 day, the supervisor is responsible for like 3 days. So they each have their own individual cell phone, so every day it's essentially changing the phone number. It may not necessarily be changing the supervisor, if that makes sense. So we previously had a little bit of a breakdown with CPS. We had a roundtable discussion and really just worked it out as a breakdown in communication. And now that we've had that communication, things have moved forward. So I think there's a lot of, which I don't know that I missed the early part of it, but there's a lot of simple fixes of, because I can point fingers at everybody to say, everybody, including law enforcement, did something wrong on all cases.
Chris, what was your last name?
Clock, KLOC.
KLOC. And you work for CPS?
No, sir, law enforcement,
Okay. What agency?
formerly Gulfport. And it's just breaking down those conversations and saying, hey, where is your pitfall? Where is our pitfall? Where can we meet in the middle?
And as we assess, I mean, I guess my question is, and that's what, I've been going down my list the past few days since Monday to say, all right, these are the proposals based on what people are telling me they can do for me to help me fix this. So could, I guess, based upon your representation here, is there not any possibility of us getting access to a direct on-call line?
I'm not saying that there's no possibility, and I appreciate Mr. Clark for speaking on that. As he said, there was an entity that was set up in place where it strengthened our relationship with law enforcement. There was some breakdown. I do not have any issue, and I do not foresee it being an issue for us to discover where the breakdown is occurring from.
Okay.
There is no on-call phone number. There's an
Right.
on-call reporting number.
Right.
There is no on-call phone number. There's an on-call supervisor that rotates, and so that number changes. They previously had an on-call supervisor phone number that they would hand from one person to another.
And I think that's what
That's
we are
accurate.
all conditioned
That
to have.
is gone.
Right.
Right, because
Why
we
is it
need
gone?
some,
Can I,
we need
can
somebody.
I make one comment here? You're calling the 800 number. That 800 number is deciding that they're going to refer it this location, or this location. Once that person receives it at that location, can that person, be the supervisor or whatever, report to the hospital that we have now received your case? And so, I am the supervisor, I'm reporting. If the hospital would let CPS know these people to call in to update their records instead of this 800 number trying to decide where it's going.
Well,
The 800 number is a central repository to receive all of the reports, and that goes into their MacWis and tracking
But they're gonna
system.
send it out to somebody.
this is, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, and somebody may not believe this, but I feel that this is a time-sensitive issue. Okay. So, give an example, how many people in this room have alarms in their homes? Okay? Have you ever set your alarm and waited on the police to show up?
No.
About 20 minutes. About 20 minutes. I don't care if you're in the county or you're in the city.
Yeah.
About 20 minutes, because that alarm company has to call the alarm calls the alarm company. That alarm company has to put their coffee down and put their sandwich down. They look it up to where it's at, and they call the PD. The PD has to, or the sheriff, they have to look at the address and go, okay, who's working that area? And then the person has to respond. So it's 20 minutes. So with the policy that y'all have in place, I'm looking at longer than 20 minutes for somebody to respond. It's gonna be hours for somebody to say. Again, this is a discussion. I'm not bashing CPS. This is a discussion that something can be fixed, and I think this is something that needs to be fixed.
But Sheriff Peterson, DHS and CPS have always had that 1-800 number. This is not a new 1-800 number that they just started. I think where the problem is that they've got these different departments, all of them on call at the same time, whereas in the past, the investigator was the only one that was responsible for the immediate going to the hospital.
Well, I'll tell you this, and I'll give you this example. When I was on patrol, and then I went to investigations, CPS's phone number was in my phone.
Exactly.
And I knew the person that was working there.
Exactly.
So I would call Susie or Bobby or whoever it was, and they would say, man, I'm in Biloxi, you're in Socia, give me about 30 minutes and I'll be there. There was no middleman that you had to call to say, I need help. It was, and they got there, and they got there and said, I can't do anything with this. And you accepted that. And then you could take them to the center that we used to have in Gulfport, or you could take them somewhere else. But it was their call, and when they knew the law, when they got there, sometimes they made us upset, sometimes they said, we got it. But it was that gamble that you had to do, but you knew the person to call on your cell phone, and law enforcement knew who to call. We have no idea who to call now, neither do the hospitals.
And it would be very helpful in the hospital whenever we call, social workers call CPS, even if it's that 800 number, have them call us back to know that we've got it, because as Sheriff Peterman said, sometimes it's days, and those babies staying in the NICU because we're waiting on CPS because no one has called us back. That's a little bit much. There's no reason why babies should sit in the NICU waiting to get a case started, and that's happened frequently.
Okay. We gotta kick this can. Go ahead.
Are all other, I was trying to ask you,
Can I get your name, ma'am?
Oh, Caitlin Kelly. Are other hospitals on, like, are y'all doing this across the board in the counties? I mean, how are the other hospitals handling these same situations? Are they having the same breakdown? Because I'm a foster mom, adopted mom, other things, and I've had to report abuse before the 1-800 number, and no one showed up for 2 weeks to the place where I've reported abuse. So I'm on the personal side of it and the other side of it, just wondering if this is gonna go here, which I know Memorial obviously sees tons of babies, it was a great start, but is this across the board? Is everybody gonna be?
We're truly hoping everybody jumps on board, yes, ma'am.
Like the
We've invited
it can go all
to
together.
other medical.
Go ahead, 30 minutes ago, I think he was wanting to talk.
I'm trying to take over. Valerie Underwood, Youth Court Administrator. Just a quick question, since this all started with specific concerns for the hospital. The 87 reports, do we know, or is there any data to see at the time those reports were made specifically from the hospital? And I think the question I'm trying to get at is, the reports as youth court, once CPS has done their investigation, they submit it to the youth court, we review their recommendation and then make the court's decision. When we receive some of these investigations, it'll have like an incident date and then the actual report date, and those are sometimes days apart. So if a child is only in the hospital for 48 hours and that's made at the tail end of the 48 hours, it's really hard for us to track these families down. We've reached out and formed a great relationship with law enforcement now we can't locate, that's the first thing that we're doing. Hey, have you contacted the local law enforcement agency to assist you in locating these folks? As law enforcement and everyone in child welfare, these families run from us intentionally, and they don't register their names places either for financial reasons or just other external factors. But the way that we have to locate these families are by them submitting and registering their name with phone bills and houses, and a lot of these people that we're working with, this population doesn't have that. And so if a report is being made closer to the end of their time, like right at discharge, sometimes it's really difficult for us to locate them following that. And I think when I spoke to the hospital before, they mentioned sometimes they don't give an accurate address to the hospital. And so we're chasing them around and losing a lot of time. I know CPS reaches out to the court to do a diligent search on our end as well through our system. But like I said, the only things that come back are if they're actually registered through paperwork with the government to be listed on here.
So when you said government, so do any of the families that you're trying to track down, do they receive social services, food stamps, or other services that y'all can tap into that database and
I
see?
cannot. CPS, I believe, has access to that database. We as a court have access to a different database that's more like your driver's license, your
Right.
vehicle purchases,
Right.
houses, and all of those things. Thank you. So I just, following up, talking with Haley earlier this week, it was really great to put that 440 back in place, and I think that's gonna be very great at holding us all accountable, all three agencies and entities. It's just the importance of that being made immediately at any suspicion of abuse and neglect inside the hospital.
The 440, was that just like a procedural thing, like a discretionary report that?
When I first started with Youth Court back in 2015, we used to receive them from mainly Memorial. A few other hospitals were not in the practice of doing that, although we asked them to, and just over the past few years, that for some reason had stopped. We had asked the hospital, I think it's just turnover, and when people change, it was a specific.
So it's
person.
not part of the statute, that this is the process, when we receive a call or report or whatever, that kind of like the victim statement, remember when the domestic violence laws first came out? There was a form that we had to implement that was the victim's statement form, and that was dictated by statute, so the 440 is not dictated by statute.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
So maybe that's part of our
The
legislation.
only thing is that you're the mandated reporter to make the hotline report. That's
Correct.
what is by,
Right.
by law.
Right.
And, we've tossed around among several of us here, have tossed around ideas and solutions to this, moving around. And, I mean, I made a joke to someone today that if, I'm the attorney at the hospital, and if somebody wants to serve me, I don't make it easy for them. So if somebody knows that somebody's filed a report.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
So if, I'm not gonna accept service via email, so if I know that I've got a CPS report filed against me, I am gonna be more inclined to make it more difficult for y'all to come check my house out if it is in complete disarray and I'm on drugs. So there are things that we've talked about, but that just can't be an excuse anymore. That somebody doesn't come to the door, so we just say, oh well. So that's something that we've looked at. Clearly the 440, and then something else you mentioned that I was gonna respond to.
I know even with the great partnership we have with law enforcement, we have a point of contact with each agency or municipality, and Harrison County specifically, to reach out to if we're having issues with that law enforcement agency or need any assistance, and that has been really helpful. We've had a handful of meetings where all of these people come to the table and we discuss specific situations, maybe where we've had issues, or just in general, what are we facing that are barriers in reaching these families. And I'm no law enforcement officer, obviously, but what I've been approached with when I've called them personally is that, well, obviously we can't just open the door because we need to see inside. And so I don't know how that works on law enforcement side, but I know that we make the phone call, hey, can you come with us? This is a situation we really need to see these folks, but if we all knock at the door, we can't just bust in and enter. And so, if we could, that'd be great. And we find these people a lot faster, but they go and just don't respond to the door all the time. And we know they're in there, CPS knows they're in there, and law enforcement does too. And so the only thing we continue to do is just go back and go back and go back and hope for a better result.
And then kids die.
That's right. You mentioned a minute ago about you were wanting the hospital to make their report more closer to when it actually happens versus what you were saying was that they're making their reports when the child's getting ready to be discharged and they're leaving the hospital. Is that
I've
correct?
seen a few like that. I'm not saying that's for obviously all ASOs, it's not, but just a few that have come through, I've seen that, so I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Okay, that's what I was curious is to maybe.
And that would depend on, and I can speak more to youth court about this, that would depend on the nature of the allegation we're making. If it's a cord positive for fentanyl, we're not gonna know until 7 days. And more often than not, if that baby's not showing signs of withdrawal, then that baby may well have been discharged.
Right,
So
I understood,
our
Dr.
report we may not know to make a report until they're gone.
I understood Dr. Caldwell to say that those reports were being made.
I don't have that
Initially,
information. I have no
that
idea.
this was like from the inception, and that they would wait, and then the child was being subsequently discharged because they can't hold a child longer than it's medically necessary.
I think it'd be great for the hospital and maybe our entities get together and go through those 87 and really look at each one of the scenarios. I think that would be really eye-opening for everyone to see, okay, this is when it happened, this is when it was reported, and this is the delay on our end. Or, hey, this is when it happened, this is the delay in our report because everyone gets busy in the hospital and everywhere else that we forgot to report it till we were signing the discharge paperwork. So I think it would be it would help everyone, these three entities especially, to go through those together and just be transparent and hold each other accountable.
I think so. I would definitely want Dr. Caldwell to be part of that discussion because I think I would be remiss, and she wanted to be here today. In fact, she wanted to be able to call in, but I think to speak on, she would allow me to speak on her behalf on this, is she would say that it has never been a delay on her part. She just, I mean, she would tell all of you that it's truly become such, I guess, a burden and this just to her that it's now where she's being interviewed and she's saying, I'm talking to people and I'm begging them not to make me discharge this baby.
I will say the first phone call received was earlier this week, Monday. So I do appreciate youth court being brought to the table with the current situation.
When they discharge these babies, if all of this goes wrong, and she's made the report, nobody's responded, and you all make the decision that the baby can be discharged or should be discharged, they're being discharged to somebody. So my question is, if they're being discharged, why isn't there a address or identification? Surely you're not discharging babies without some proof that these are mama and mama lives at 440, 50, 60th Street. I mean, they do it for me. When I go into the hospital, they want to see my ID, my insurance card, my social security card, my birth certificate. I mean, y'all ask me for everything. So my question is, why isn't that happening with all of this is just mind-boggling to me because it is just mind-boggling that you're waiting 2 days, up to 7 days for somebody to come out and see a child. It's mind-boggling because I'm not gonna say another word.
Girl,
but
you already owe us 3 minutes.
But I have to go back, and the only reason I'm here is because I hear all this and I saw all of that on TV, and I have to go back to when we were working, when I was working. We were under Olivia White. We had a court monitor. We couldn't even go to the bathroom unless the court monitor knew why we was going to the bathroom. We couldn't do anything, and we had the investigative unit, and they were the ones who responded to the investigation. Now, if the caseworker was on call, they went out, had to. They may not have gone out at night if they're at the hospital because we know they're safe, but they had to go out the next day. And the idea that children are dying, 2 babies I know of, because nobody went out, is just mind-boggling. And this thing about DHS, we got this group over here now, and we got this group over here, and this group does this, and this group does that. Obviously, that ain't working. That ain't working. And I retired from DHS. Okay, there's nothing they can do to me. It ain't working because it makes no sense. It's just like Sheriff Peterson said. Some things are just plain simple. And when we were on call, I had a phone, the same phone that Mary Jo had when she was on call. We just gave the phone to each other. It's the same number. It didn't matter who was on call. It didn't matter what supervisor was on call. It didn't matter what worker was on call. They had 2 phone numbers. The supervisor and the worker, period. And we had the 1-800 number. The 1-800 number is not the problem. I think once it leaves the 1-800 number is where the problem begins. And that's my 15-cent worth.
I wish I'd have known I could use a different address and I wouldn't get a bill. They find me every time.
I know, huh? So it's awful. It's awful.
What year did you retire?
Look, I want to say this.
Since 2013.
I want to say this. It touches my heart very strongly that this many people showed up and this many people have opinions about what we have opinions about also. So, saying that, we do have an issue. But it's an issue that I think that we can fix. It's an issue that I think a lot of things can be fixed very simply. Just simply can be fixed. Other things that we're gonna have to look at changing laws. So there's a lot to do with this committee, but again, I'm gonna say this is an oversight committee on transparency and accountability. That's what we're about. We're not bashing an agency. We're not trying to do it. We're trying to fix it so it betters the kids in Harrison County. And if we do good here, then Hines County will pick it up, Jackson County will pick it up. That's what we're hoping. We're hoping it's a statewide effort to where everything changes. But I want to thank everybody for attending today. Thank everybody for being here. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn. Need a motion?
Make a motion.
And a second? Second. Thank y'all for coming.
Thank y'all.
You doing, Jim? So?
We miss you, no.
Good
Going back out, working with her.
Hey.
Hard.